All right, up next we have Josh. Josh wrote in and said, the question I ask relates to not only Syrian refugees, but to all other less well-off people around the world in comparison to the Western world. When is it acceptable to allow people to die in deplorable conditions? That's from Josh.
Hey, Josh, how you doing?
I'm around yourself, Stefan.
Well, thanks. Why do you refer to them as Syrian refugees?
Because that's what the media has been referring to them as. And that's how people would more recognize them as. And if you called them, migrants, then everyone's just going to make the connotation that they are the Syrian refugees anyway, even though most of them are not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important not to concede the language anyway, but I just wanted to point that out. Well, let me ask you this. What are you doing about people dying in deplorable conditions around the world? What's your activity in that area?
Not a damn thing.
All right. So why do you care about the question if you're not doing anything about it?
Because as you've been saying with the social justice left and the allowance of migrants into Europe from deplorable conditions, it does have an impact on the Western world, mainly Europe, for the time being, but it's going to slowly seep into our side of the ocean. And whenever you talk to people about this, they always say something along the lines of, they're just coming here because they want a better life. They just want to get out of the deplorable conditions that they're going to die in, whether it be war-torn Syria or apparently the deplorable condition that is Africa. So it's come down to the dichotomy of leaving them there, or this is how it's presented, the conundrum. They're left there to die, or they're brought here for a better life. So between those two, leaving them there to die is, well, in my self-interest, the more preferable option.
What do you mean leaving them there to die? I don't understand what that means. I mean, they're not fucking helpless dolls. They don't lack will or the capacity to think, right? I mean, I don't know what it means. Like, I'm not some god along the world that can let people to die or save people from death. I mean, leave them there to die. They're not tied and bound at the bottom of a canyon or something. They're not a hiking companion. I don't know what it means to say allow people to die in deplorable conditions. The West has developed the free market. They're welcome to adopt the free market. It's not patented. The West has developed the separation of church and state, which cost centuries of religious warfare from fundamentalists. Separation of church and state. They're welcome to adopt that. Anywhere in the world, nobody's going to stop them. The West has developed a sense of egalitarianism between men and women. It may have gone a little bit too far towards gynocentrism, and so on probably has. But you could work for equal rights from women. The West has developed more peaceful methods of child raising. Again, not patented. You could choose not to beat your children. You could choose not to indoctrinate them in brutal ideologies. I don't understand what it means. Everything there is free, and you don't have to come to the West to get it, because they're ideas. The ideas can be transferred across the borders. We have the internet. So you can get the great ideas the West has got, and you can implement them in your own country. I don't know what it means to say that just allowing people to die.
Then let me preface it then. Well, if you're talking to a leftist and you're talking about the migrant crisis and you say, no, they should not be allowed here, usually what they will respond with is something along the lines of, well, they're just trying to get to a better life, right?
Sure, I get that. I mean, if I go and if someone goes and steals someone else's identity and assumes their identity, and that they have a better life. They have access to that person's credit, and maybe they can even get into their house. And I mean, a better life. Why do they need to travel to the West to get a better life? Why don't they just create countries that are better?
Beats me. Apparently, the left thinks they can't.
Well, of course, if they can't live in a free society that they create themselves, what makes anyone think they can live in a free society in the West? If enough people in the Middle East want freedom, they'll get freedom. What did people in the West do for freedom? They fought like hell for it. There were civil wars, there were revolutions, there were peaceful revolutions, there were intellectual revolutions. That's how the West got its freedom. I don't understand are they helpless? If they're helpless, they're not going to fit into the West, because the West is about conscience and self-determinism and free will and moral responsibility. If they're helpless playthings of their environment, how are they going to fit in the West? If they're not, the West has already developed the intellectual framework for a free and productive society. It's not complicated. Free market, separation of church and state, equality under the law. It's not that complicated. And so why can't they do it? Well, we know why they can't do it. At least there's some good ideas as to why they can't do it. They can't do it because you have IQ 80 to 85. They can't do it any more than Detroit can do it. Any more than sub-Saharan Africa can do it. Any more than the indigenous aboriginals or the pygmies in the Amazon rainforest can do it. Because they don't have the intellectual horsepower on average to defer gratification and achieve freedom. So even people raised in the relative freedoms of the West who have an IQ average of 85 can't reliably as a community achieve those freedoms. So we know why. It's IQ and ideology. And so if the IQ and ideology is there, bringing them to the West won't change that.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's the thing when it comes to debating leftists and anybody who wants to bring migrants here, who use that argument. And I bring this up to you, sir, because nobody is willing to say, leave them there. Whenever the argument comes up, they're just coming here for a better life. Everybody just tries to dance around it. Just dance around saying, no, leave them there. If they die, they die. That sucks, because that's what the left makes it sound like. If they stay there, they're going to die in deplorable conditions. And maybe, I'm sure many of them will. But as opposed to bringing them here where, assimilation is proving quite difficult for them and leaving them there,
but this is a false dichotomy. There's no... I personally am happy to help people in the Middle East. Personally. Look, I've made the case before. It's worth making it again. And you've probably heard it, but just for those who haven't. You can help 12 people in the Middle East for every one person you bring into the West. Clearly, there are hundreds and hundreds of millions of people in the Middle East who would like to live in the West. Can they all come? No. But that will completely destroy the economies of the West because of the welfare state and so on, right? And the extraordinary expense of language and cultural issues and needs for translation and you name it, right? I mean, it completely destroyed the economies of the West. And then you have a bunch of people who've left their homeland, tried to integrate into the West, and the West has collapsed economically. What the hell? But that cannot be considered anyone's solution, right? And
the leftist solution.
So you help people in the Middle East. But the best way to help people in the Middle East is to find the political leaders in the West who started the wars in the Middle East and throw them in jail. International war crime of aggression. Throw them in jail.
Absolutely.
Because that way, people, political leaders, might think twice before bombing the shit out of the entire Middle East.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about 2003 Bush. I'm talking about Tony Blair. I'm talking about Barack Obama. All people who bombed with no declaration of war, or who bombed with no justification of self-defense, or who invaded with no justification of self-defense. Iraq posed no threat to the United States or to England. So the idea that you can just go invade countries because groups of people with highly conflicted interests say, oh no, you'll be greeted as liberators, you'll bouquets and flowers. The idea that we're going to solve this by just letting the political leaders get away with crimes against humanity and then taking all of the displaced people or some of the displaced people or everyone who's hiding amongst all those displaced peoples. Come on. This is not how you solve problems. You stop sending foreign aid, which destroys the local economies. You stop arming governments around the world. You stop invading and bombing countries. You stop arming insurgents. You stay the fuck home. And you stop meddling with eternal weaponry in the most volatile regions in the known universe. I mean, it's not that the West is failing to help. The West has been trying to manage the Middle East for hundreds of years. Just stop it. Just stop it.
Absolutely. And I am in full 100% agreement with you, sir, that this is a problem that, well, the West has brought on itself. And by the West, I mean the Western governments, of course. This is a problem we brought on ourselves. So, I mean, this whole thing could have been avoided if we just minded our own fucking business as we should have.
Right. And the people who were pro-war, they have some responsibility in the matter. Hang on a sec, my camera's gone all foggy. Wait till the camera.
Yes, and, well, you remember the propaganda phrase that was pretty prominent during the Iraq War, right? Support the troops. I'm pretty sure we all remember that.
Oh, yeah.
So where are these same people when the troops are dying more from suicide than, fighting in the wars? Where are those people?
You mean the R-selected people who like watching K-selected people die? I think that they're enjoying it with a bowl of popcorn, frankly.
Ouch. But probably more accurate than we're willing to admit, mainly because this is one of my bigger problems with a lot of people, is there's a lot of talk, no action. I have made it quite clear I don't care about the people, dying in deplorable conditions in Africa. I'm honest about that. I don't care. They're not connected to me. They are not part of my life.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think you and I would care insofar as by dumping massive amounts of free food and free foreign aid in these countries, as well as destroying their local economies with free food and free foreign aid, the West has stimulated an unsustainable population growth in Africa.
Very true, yes.
Right, so the people would not be having 8 kids if there was not enough food. They would restrain their fertility, as human beings are wont to do. So we've just dumped massive amounts of food into Africa, and lo and behold, looky-la, you've got massive amounts of Africans. So I really think it's very cruel to stimulate the production of human life that can't be sustained in the current environment. Because if the West stops dumping all this free food and free aid into Africa, what's going to happen? Brutal civil wars, overthrows, dictatorships, mass migration. It's horrible. And so I care. I don't want people to be brought into this world in order to suffer and die in pointless civil wars and revolutions and riots and fights over food. I think it's terrible. I think it's terrible. I don't think that's right at all. But now that the situation has been created, to ask the people who were opposed to the policies that produced the situation to sacrifice for the solution is insane. It's like only drafting the people who were against the Iraq War. Right?
Right.
I should not suffer for the result of policies that I have strongly opposed my entire adult life, that I have argued against for 30 years. They fucked up Africa by dumping all this free food and free resources and selling a shitload of weaponry to despotic governments. They fucked up Africa. And they, the political elites, the leaders, the people who profited from it, they should be the ones to pay. It was wrong to steal from people in the West and dump massive amounts of free stuff into Africa. You have an IQ 70 to 85 population, they're just going to have lots of kids. High IQ populations restrain their breeding when there are excess resources. Low IQ populations breed to carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is unsustainable. It's literally like feeding, this is a silly analogy, but it's like feeding your garden, seeding it with like incredible food for rabbits until there are thousands of rabbits and then cutting the food off. That's just sadistic, you understand? Oh, look at the rabbits starve, look at the rabbits fight. You crazy? This is evil. It's so wrong. It's unholy. It's satanic. It's demonic.
Yes.
So I care. Now, I have my life to live. I have my values to pursue. I have my family to raise. I have my listenership to court and please. So I don't sort of sit there and wake up, 500 times a night saying somebody else died somewhere in the world. Everybody goes along with their life, right? But I can certainly see the bigger picture and how horrible it has been. The new and even more brutal colonialism of foreign aid has been far more destructive than colonialism could ever be, even as it's portrayed.
Yes. What I was getting at, though, was when you see these people say they care, ask them what they do personally, and you'll find that they don't do anything. They call on governments to do their work for them, pretty much like they do everything else.
Have you been following the J.K. Rowling thing at all?
Yes,
on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't. I would.
J.K. Rowling, big fan of the migrants. Big fan of the migrants. And Mike Cernovich is like, hey, you've got like 30 bedrooms. I will pay for the migrants' flights to get to your house. How do we make this happen? No reply. And then, she put out something about Donald Trump not wanting to touch a boy in a wheelchair, which was a complete lie. He did hug the boy and all that kind of stuff. It's still up, I don't know, J.K. Rowling. What can I say? Right, an evil, fictionalized villain, cool. B, a real, non-fictionalized villain, not cool. So.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. When you call them out on their bullshit, and this happens to a lot of people who do not, as you say, have facts and arguments and logic backing them. When you call them out on their bullshit and inconsistencies, what do? They either shut down or they lash out with self-righteous indignation they have not earned. And all they have is emotional gratification in the moment, where they've decided that they don't need to see into the future. They don't need to see the consequences, the longer-term consequences. All they want to do is feel good in the moment.
But it's an addiction, right? So, virtue signaling is an addiction. This pomposity of looking good rather than doing good is an addiction. And what do drug addicts do when you take away their supply? They manipulate, they attack, they wheedle, they cajole, they lie, they brutalize, they abuse. They just do whatever they can to get their drug.
Absolutely.
And this kind of dopamine hit, this shitty dopamine hit of, well, people, I'm going to say the right thing. And it's a very elaborate and elegant fuck you to anybody who's got a rational view of the world. Hey, resources are limited. We can't do everything. Oh, well, I just care about people. It's like, what do you even say to people like that?
You tell them to fuck off.
We have 1,000 people in the ocean and we have lifeboats for 100. Well, I just care about people. Well, I know who's going off the lifeboat now.
Use that altruism. Good job. So, what I was wanting to get at with this was that the fact of the matter is that in this view, in the leftist view, and yes, it is a false dichotomy, but it is a dichotomy that the mainstream media portrays, that social justice portrays, that these people are going to stay in these areas, these deplorable areas, and they're going to die unless they are brought to Europe for a better life. But
that's just false. Again, it's just, they don't know the history, they don't know the opportunities, they don't know the possibilities. Saudi Arabia has a tent city that can house hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. They've taken virtually no one. There are tons of countries around now. People say, well, no one in the Middle East has taken anyone. That's not exactly true. There are people who have been taken by other Middle Eastern countries, but this is not, why does Europe have to solve this problem? The Middle East, the Muslim world is fantastically wealthy in many ways. They stole a bunch of Western oil companies and have been milking it ever since. Why do Christians and agnostics and atheists have to solve problems in Muslim countries involving Muslims? Why? Did the Muslim world say, oh, don't worry, Europe, you're having a world war, we'll take everyone? They didn't. Right?
No. But if you ask people, they'll say because, the United States government and the Western governments went in and fucked everything up.
Great. Then we should throw people in jail. Then we should punish people. If someone goes and commits a crime, We don't ask everyone in the neighborhood to suffer as a result. We take that person, we identify them, and we throw them in jail as a disincentive for other people and as a promise that it's not going to recur.
Yeah, and this goes back to what you said in the other call about I'm allowed to mention that, right? I hope I am. About, the right needing to throw a fit, about the right needing to get some results finally. The left's been getting results, and as we both know, results are what matter at the end of the day. At least that's
all that matters, fundamentally.
Yeah,
when I was going through chemo, you know what I cared about? The result. That's all I cared about.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. Results are what matter. The left's been getting the results. They're still getting the results. If the right wants anything to get done, by the way we want it to get done, we need to switch up tactics that get results. What we've been doing so far with using logic and reason and evidence, which you've said the left does, which the left has pretty much a shield around their head where they won't accept it, it's not working.
No.
So telling them about the history or anything of that like for the Muslim world, that's not going to do any good.
I mean, the Republicans... fucking Republicans. Jesus Christ.
I know, it's
what a fraudulent fucking organization. How many hundreds of millions of dollars did those bastards raise on the promise of repealing Obamacare? Give to us. We'll repeal Obamacare. Donate to us so we can repeal Obamacare. Fucking fraud. They have now been trying. They've had the majority for a long time, and they have tried and they have tried and they won't fucking do it. That's fraud to me. Give me $500. I'll ship you an iPad. Thanks for $500. Here's a piece of shit in an iPad box. Are you happy now? Absolute fraud. They made a promise. Damn it. They took hundreds of millions of dollars, raised hundreds of millions of dollars to deliver mostly one thing, repealing Obamacare. And this is how pathetic it's become for Republicans in the West prior to Donald Trump. This is how sad it is. They're not asking for a fully free market in healthcare. They're just saying, take this semi-fascistic Obamacare shit off our necks. That's all they're asking for. They're not saying, can we go back to 1776? They're not saying, can we go back to 1911? They're saying, can we just go back to before Obamacare? We're not talking 100 years or 50 years of rolling shit back. We're just talking a couple of years back. No! Oh, it's sad. It's sad. John McCain?
Oh.
John fucking McCain.
The tumor had something to do with it. Just pretend the tumor had something to do with it.
I gotta think if the tumor feeds on integrity, it's gonna have a pretty fucking hungry life ahead of it. John McCain, I'm campaigning to repeal Obamacare. Here's your chance, John. Go. I know it's not perfect. It may not have even been great, but at least that's what you promised. No, now I'm gonna go over and giggle with the Democrats. Let's see Trump make America great now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer people who weren't captured too.
Okay. Okay, so there was another part to this the deplorable conditions thing. And it's not to do with refugees or migrants. It's actually to do with people who've made terrible fucking decisions in the first world, such as a single mother who slept around with like 5 guys and has 5 different children, and she is unable to care for those children.
Wait, why is she unable to care for them?
Between working and actually being around. I'm sorry, I'm making a lot of leaps. She has
No, come on. You're just setting up helplessness the same way that leftists do with the migrants.
Yeah.
Of course she's able to care for the kids. Because let's say there are 7 single mums in an apartment building, and trust me, apartment buildings are full of them. I grew up in one. There are 7 single moms in an apartment building. So what do? They all get together in the lobby and they say, okay, I work Monday, you take care of kids Monday. I work Tuesday, you care of kids. I work Wednesday. Right? They can figure it out.
No, you're right. You're absolutely
Now, if they can't figure it out, if they can't even figure out how to take care of their children, should they even be voting? Come on. I mean, they can't even tie their shoes. Of course they can. If they can't figure out how to take care of their kids, then somebody else needs to be taking care of their kids.
I wish the world worked that way.
No, the world would work exactly that way if the government wasn't propping up all these terrible decisions and subsidizing everyone.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way the world works, is the government's propping up bad decisions. But anyway, you know that, so you know this. This is one of those ANCAP traps where you've taken this helpless situation where you've got the false dichotomy of either the government does it or it's not going to get done at all, right?
Right.
And you've got this situation where if you're an anarchist, where you have to say either let the children starve or let the government come in and, you know, rescue the woman, the single mother, from her bad decisions. And that's the framework they work in. I know it's a stupid framework. It's not rational in the least.
Yeah,
that there's
so
a
go on
million
with why you're
questions
bringing
to
it all
ask,
up. Right, go ahead.
because that's their frame of mind. And what I would like to see is people answer honestly within that little framework.
No, that framework you
brutalism.
can't win. Just jump out. Just say to them, okay, how do you pay off the national debt? Simple. Let's say to the leftists, okay, the US has $150 trillion in unfunded liabilities. How are you going to pay for it? The US government has promised more than $150 trillion. It has no money to pay. How are you going to pay for it? We're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Okay, show me the math. Show me the fucking math, genius.
Good luck.
Magic? Right? And it's like, okay, listen, there's one of my favorite movies called The Room with a View.
I've never seen it.
You should watch it. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. And in it, I won't get into the details, but in it, one guy asks a bunch of questions of another guy, and they don't really have an answer. And he's like, oh, so you haven't really thought about this seriously at all, so why should I bother listening? It's like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the U.S., how much does the U.S. have in unfunded liabilities? Oh, I don't know. What's the U.S. national debt? Oh, I don't know. What's the U.S. deficit? Well, I don't know. What's the biggest items in the U.S. Deficit budget? Or what's the biggest items in the U.S. budget? Well, I don't know. It's like, well, why the fuck should I listen to you? You don't know anything. Like, how could you be so stupid as to think that anybody should listen to you about a subject you know nothing about? And even if they do know these numbers, say, okay, how are you going to pay? How are you going to pay for these unfunded liabilities? Magic, right? I mean, you can't. These unfunded liabilities cannot be paid for. So don't give me this there's a future with no suffering bullshit. There's no future without suffering. The hole has been dug so deep, there is going to be no future wherein no sacrifice is going to be required. And you know what? This sacrifice will make us better. I wish it weren't true. I wish it wasn't going to happen, but by God, it's going to make us better, because you know what? We are so fucking deluded as a culture in the West. We live in such mad, insane, deluded unreality. Fiddling while Rome burns, arguing about how many migrants we can possibly take in when we can't afford any of the promises we've made to our citizens.
You mistake me, Stefan. I am looking forward to the day when we finally admit this can't go on forever. I'm looking forward to the day when it's Schadenfreude. It's my own Schadenfreude. I look forward to the day when everyone fucking realizes that this system, and they want to make it bigger, that it cannot get any bigger. It cannot get any worse. This hole cannot get any deeper. I mean, it's going to get deeper, but there's going to come a point when we have nowhere to throw the dirt anymore. And I want to see the looks on everyone's face who thought that they were going to have universal health care, who thought they're going to have old age pension retirement via transfer of wealth from the young to the old. These people are thieves. They want to take from other people and give it to themselves, or whatever emotional bullshit, lacking consequential foresight that they have. I don't like these people. I really don't. And when they... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And when they finally realize that everything they thought they could do, that people would just put up with it forever, well, when they find out that it will not happen, when they've tried to uplift people from poverty, when they've tried to take care of everyone, and it fucks over everyone, I want to see what they have to say. I want to see what they have to say to their children.
They won't. They won't say anything different than everything they've been saying already. They won't learn a thing. They won't. I mean, we have in the West, we can blame everyone we want. We can blame the government. We can blame the migrants. We can blame the unions. We can blame, but we have just become a deeply immoral society. We've become a deeply vicious society. We've become a society that self-righteously pursues vampiric predation upon the young, that uses babies as collateral to feed our materialistic greed, that is happy to sell off the next generation of Chinese banksters in order to stuff ourselves with saturated fats in the here and now, who grow obese on drinking the blood of the unborn. We have become a deeply vampiric and deeply immoral society. And this is something people really, really need to understand. It's not fundamentally the government that has failed. It is not fundamentally socialism that has failed. It is not central planning that has failed. None of that has failed. We have failed. We have failed. The people have failed. And people like you and I who've been speaking reason and truth to the ignorant and the powerful for decades, we have not failed, because I have acquitted myself as honorably as I can conceivably have done so in this fight. I have taken the risks. I have pushed the envelope. I have challenged people with challenging topics for as long as the show has been running, and taken the hits thereby, which is fine. That's part of the game. But we have become a deeply immoral society, and we don't see it. And that is the fundamental problem of our immorality. We don't even have the decency to feel shitty about bending over the cribs and drinking the blood of the young. Like, people will self-righteously shake their fists at government and say, go tax those babies, go sell off those babies. People are appalled at the possibility, even the vague insinuation that abortion mills are selling off baby parts. Christ, how about the national debt? We're selling off entire lives. We're selling off entire futures, lying to 17-year-olds and burying them in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, sometimes to indoctrinate them in shitty anti-market education, throw them out into the free market and watch them fail. Watch them never get a life started. We don't care about children being thrown into shitty government schools and being taught by blind, low-rent ideologues. We don't care about all the crap they put in the food. We don't care about, let's just appease the kids with sugar and let's buy everything in the supermarket which has sugar, which is basically everything in a box these days. We don't care. The children are problematic. Let's drug them with drugs that shrink up to 10% of their fucking brain mass. Rather than change the system, we don't care. We don't care. We don't care about the young. We don't care about the future. We care about stuffing our fat fucking faces with taxpayer money robbed from the unborn. That's all we care about these days. And buying 5 more minutes of peace so we don't have to be troubled as we continue to stuff our aforementioned fat fucking faces. We don't care about what's noble, about what's good, about what's right, and the very concept of sacrifice seems to have been irradiated out of the Western soul. Maybe it was the grand exodus of K-selected bodies in World War II. I don't know. But the idea of sacrifice, the idea of living within your means, the idea of honesty, the idea of having a conscience. When have you ever heard any of the boomers say, sorry, kids, we completely fucked it up for you. We got greedy, our greed ran away with us, and we fogged out of reality and pretended we didn't have the basic numerical skills that come with counting your fingers and your toes. We borrowed, we mortgaged, we got you viciously into debt, and there's nothing to show for it other than a vastly bigger government that's going to choke off your economic opportunities. We had freedom, we had low taxes, and we used all of that freedom and low taxes to beg money from the government, beg free stuff from the government. The government went into debt, and now we don't even hand you a tenth of the freedoms we were handed. We hand you nothing because we hand you a gargantuan government, massive unfunded liabilities, massive debt, massive deficits, demographic replacement. Oh, and now we need even more than ever because now we're not even going to pretend to pay taxes. Now we just want free healthcare and our old age pensions. Fuck you very much.
Yeah, I believe Ayn Rand called that unfreedom, where you've essentially thrown away freedom for security. And when you throw away freedom for security, you deserve neither and lose both, especially when it comes to government, especially when it comes to an institution where they can't even handle a pension plan, and these people want them to handle healthcare.
They can't even handle building steps down the side of a park, as I talked about earlier in the show. So we have just become a deeply cold, selfish, materialistic, greedy, conscienceless bunch of vampires, all maneuvering to feed off the state at the expense of the future.
Yes.
And when you stray far enough from reality, nature wipes you out. I mean, nature doesn't care. You know, if you think that that approaching train is your friend and you should run up and give it a hug, nature doesn't care about your delusions.
I believe that's a Darwin Award.
Well, maybe entire cultures can get Darwin Awards. So this is the fundamental. The deficiency is in morality. The deficiency is in ethics. The deficiency is in empathy. Like, instead of real empathy for the children in our societies, we have this pretend empathy for the migrants of other countries. We instead of genuine compassion for our culture and our society, and instead of compassion for the millions of men, largely men, who died to deliver us our freedoms, instead of compassion for their sacrifice, we have sentimentality about mad schemes of diversity that won't ever work and will do the exact opposite of working in the long run. So this is the reality of where we are. We need a moral revolution. We need a moral revolution. And I have my criticisms of Islam, but the idea that well, we're just so much more moral and we're just so much better and we have it all down as far as reality and ethics go, I could very easily make a case the exact opposite direction. And so, yeah, we better get our shit together, and we better remember what it's like to have ethics, and what it's like to have compassion, and what it's like to have caring, and what it's like to want to treasure all of the gifts that our ancestors died to hand us. Because right now we are bleeding dry the bank. We are bleeding out the capital that sustained our civilization. And it's like our entire culture is like what the rich guy, the very rich guy for real, was once asked when he went bankrupt. And someone asked him, how did you go bankrupt? And he said, funny, very slowly, and then very quickly.